Hunters, it is time for your exotic armor tier list update for 2021, or rather, should I say your reposting of the 2020 exotic armor tier list. This tier list isn't about stuff that can work, my favorite exotics, or anything like that. It is focused on how strong an exotic will make the average player in both PvE and PvP. As usual, we'll cover the 4 exotics that came out over the past year first. Starting with RAIJU'S Harness. Makes it so your guard does not consume any energy and you can deactivate Whirlwind Guard early. Unfortunately for hunters, they got one of the best exotic armor pieces in the entire game for Arcstrider in RAIDEN FLUX, at least in PvE, 3.5 years ago. While the non-super draining blocking potential is nice, it's not something I feel is that necessary compared to just bashing everything into the ground via RAIDEN FLUX. I guess being able to cancel your super early is nice in a Geomags kind of way, just pop, kill something, and then turn it off, but Geomags works a lot better because of the top-off mechanic and because it's a ranged ability. Also, I forgot how embarrassingly short this super is when you're not buffed by RAIDEN FLUX's duration buff. It's so short. While RAIDEN FLUX's damage boost is probably insane overkill in PvP, the duration portion is pretty handy, although it is way more fun to reflect stuff into people's faces than bashing them with a stick. Mask of Bakris has been making some headway into the meta, coming with Beyond Light. Your stasis dodge turns into a longer range shift teleport kind of thing, and after shifting, arc weapons deal increased damage for a short time, and you deal more damage to slowed or frozen enemies. A lot going on there. For PvE, this is a nice little damage boost on command, although you do need to be using an arc weapon to really get the most out of it, obviously, but it's a nice boost to something like anarchy damage on a boss or a champion. Not to mention, it's one of the very few exotics in the game that has any sort of stasis-specific attribute. PvP is where the shift ability shines a lot more, really confusing an opponent in a 1v1 or just being able to get out of a combat situation a little more reliably. The outplay potential is incredibly high with Bakris, as you're seeing in these clips with Jez, because I am not good at the PvP, especially combined with the stasis aspect that slows any opponents nearby when you dodge. Stasis post-nerf is not as insane as it used to be, but it's still very, very usable, making Mask of Bakris a top-tier option for those who are able to wield its strengths. If you want to see this helm in action a lot more, check out Jez's video, linked in the description. Thanks for the free clip, you effing idiot. ATHRYS'S Embrace. This is an interesting one. Weighted Knife, aka Bottom Tree, gets a second bounce, and precision hits allow you to use your knife as a way to stun unstoppable champions on top of giving you a big boost in damage. This is a bit of extra utility when it comes to high-end content, although I'm not sure how many people are absolutely relying on it for their only unstoppable stun. This is probably going to be a backup. The second bounce is neat, but I'm not using an entire exotic for a second bounce of a knife for PvE. The main thing here for PvE is the bonus throwing knife damage. A few precision hits is going to boost the hell out of your throwing knife damage and add that unstoppable stun on top of it. But if you stun a champion, you're not going to get that bonus damage unless you get... Oh my god, just kill me. You're not going to get that bonus damage unless you get another knife and then throw it. Now, outside of Master and GM content, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with these gloves, especially when maxing out all your mobility and strength stats and perks and all that to be spamming one-shotting knives. Within a Master or GM, though, I'm a bit more skeptical of its use, considering you're dumping all of your effort into a throwing knife. If you can hit constant headshot knives, then more power to you, I guess, but I don't think this is something the average person should really concern themselves with, again, in Master or GM content. In the context of PvP, though, Very interesting. The aim assistance with the strengthened throw used to be insane when they first launched. You could just bounce it off of the floor and it would auto-track people. Since then, I don't think it's nearly as potent, although you are capable of getting some very fun kills thanks to said aim assistance. But it's still not something I'm going to recommend to the average player unless you happen to have really good map knowledge and game sense, because I don't think the effort required matches the reward. And if you do have those things, well, you're not an average player. In my opinion, you have to spend too much time finding setups and getting knives back when you could just, be playing the game. Finally, we have OMNIOCULUS, new with Season 13, which is all about invisibility. You get a second smoke bomb and get damage resistance when invisible. When you make an ally invisible, they get the damage resistance and you get melee energy. Essentially, this is all about chaining invisibility effects on your team, and it does that very, very well. Invisibility effects are one of the best defensive tools to have in something like GM content or even lesser content in order to be able to res people safely or get out of bad situations or rotate your team, whatever you need to do. The average team will likely find themselves in at least one or two of those situations per run, and being able to be bailed out like that is very valuable. Combine that with Heart of the Pack, and you're looking at a great utility PvE exotic in the end game. If you hit all of your teammates in a Nightfall, you get your smoke bomb back, allowing you to stack Heart of the Pack with ease and keep it up constantly, which is a massive boost to your team. The competition here is 6th Coyote. In the Proving Grounds GM Nightfall, we saw it was very difficult to get close to enemies, to dodge near them, to get melee charges back compared to other GMs. This is where Omni can shine more. Omni also shines in something like Fallen Saber, where you and your teammates are typically bunched up due to the much smaller combat arenas. In other GMs, 6th Coyote can get the job done as well. Now, this definitely has some PvP viability, but I would focus way more on offensive tools as a hunter in PvP, maybe save for a couple of exotics. Moving to the best of, let's review our best subclass specific exotics. And hunters, let me tell you, you got quite the list here. And by quite the list, I mean literally almost the exact same list as last time. Celestial Nighthawk and Shards of Galanor continue to dominate the PvE meta for gunslingers. Really tough, really tough to beat the instant massive burst damage of Celestial Nighthawk, and if you're on Blade Barrage, Shards is not a very tough choice to make. You could opt for Ophidia as well if you're feeling more of a throwing knife type of build in that middle or bottom tree, or if you're generating a lot of melee energy thanks to a strike modifier. But in endgame content, Shards is going to be the easy set and forget for middle tree and Celestial for bottom tree. RAIDEN FLUX, as I just said, is the Arcstrider exotic, and honestly, will probably be the Arcstrider exotic until the end of time. Light, heavy attack combo murders everything in sight. It is god tier for PvE for all modes of play. Still, the other Arc exotics, Liar's Handshake, Lucky Raspberry, and Shinobu's Vow, are good. They're not RAIDEN FLUX good. If you want something besides RAIDEN FLUX, since it can work as a swap exotic, Liar's Handshake and a 1-2 punch shotgun can make for some wicked melee damage combos, especially when combined with a melee regenerating dodge. Shinobu's Vow and Lucky Raspberry for PvE anyway are lower down the list here because, well, the other two are just plain better in terms of offensive firepower. And surprise, surprise, Orpheus Rig continues its dominance as well. Nothing else really competes in the tree in PvE whatsoever in terms of ease of use. OMNIOCULUS is definitely flirting with a decently high spot on the list though. It just requires a lot more attention to the battlefield compared to just dropping a fat tether on the ground and getting a bunch of super energy back. Ease of use definitely goes to Rig, but Omni has almost full uptime when it comes to the perk. GWISIN Vest is definitely what you want to use for Spectral, but that would require you to use Spectral in the endgame, which is a lot tougher to pull off, it's not as good, and it doesn't have the utility of the other trees, maybe save for Flawless Executioner, which itself is risky in endgame content. Hunter neutral exotics are pretty good for PvE as well. While Stompies are probably the most widely used neutral exotic, I won't be giving them a rating due to them being a movement exotic, like I have been doing for the past few years, but I think we all know how good they are. Otherwise, from last year, we have Dragon Shadow, Frosties, Sixth Coyote, and Gemini Jester. The Dragon's Shadow to me is much more of a PvP exotic. While the reload portion of the perk is very nice, and while you can have a ton of uptime with it, I don't value fast handling speeds in PvE whatsoever. There are not many times where you need to swap to another weapon with lightning speed. It does allow you to get both reload and melee energy on dodge, which is nice, but you're nuts if you think I'm using this over the subclass exotics. Frosties are a very passive exotic. You gain energy when you sprint, and dodging increases your sprint speed. This is just something that kind of happens in the background, but it is also something that you can actively control if you want. Decent utility, decent exotic here, nothing insane for PvE, but it just has a ton of flexibility for any subclass branch that you happen to be using. The Sixth Coyote's extra dodge charge opens up a lot of possibilities across a lot of subclass branches. In the context of high-end PvE though, this is mainly going to revolve around getting extra smoke bombs for invis to res your teammates, so you can smoke bomb, dodge, etc. Omnio feels like it was made specifically for this kind of play, of which I would say either one kind of works. This is the utility it's going to have for GM content, although Stasis also works with Sixth Coyote because of the Hunter's ability to slow enemies on dodge. For the other two subclasses, I'm not as thrilled, but there's always going to be something you can do with multiple dodges in hand. Gemini Jester's Disorient effect is strong, especially on such a short cooldown. You can use it both offensively or defensively, getting out of tight spots or setting up your team to wipe out some enemies. But what holds this back to me in PvE is the short duration of the Disorient effect. It's short enough to let you get yourself out of trouble, but not long enough to really use it for much more than that. In that case, going invis is just going to be a way better choice. Also, sometimes it doesn't do anything at all, and then you're really screwed. Invis has very little consistency problems, compared to this, where I had it fail on me 3 or 4 times in the span of 7 minutes. As far as PvP goes though, for gunslingers specifically, you're looking at knife-based exotics, so Ophidia or ATHRYS'S Embrace, Ophidia being the more reliable one since having 2 is better than having 1, but I think most people are opting for neutral subclass exotics when it comes to Hunter PvP nowadays. For Arc, Shinobu's Vow, I'm going to say is probably the best option here. Again, more ability charges, and in this case, enhanced abilities are always going to be good, and Shinobu's is the simplest to use as well. Lucky Raspberry, well, it's in the name. It relies on luck to trigger that grenade a second time. If you get it, great. If not, well, your exotic is now worthless until your grenade comes back. You can always swap to RAIDEN or RAIJU'S whenever you have your super, though. For Void, you're still using GWISIN Vest for Spectral, and you're still running Rig for Tether or Quiver, but these are also swap exotics. Graviton Forfeit is still technically in the mix, but again, neutral exotics are where Hunters really see a lot of their power. So let's just cut to the chase. Hunter, neutral, PvP exotics. There are quite a lot of good ones, but there is one that sticks out among the rest, and that is Stompies, plain and simple. Again, I don't like to rate movement exotics, but it is undeniable that these boots are the meta. These transcend my no rating movement exotics system. The movement benefits you gain are substantial. Sprint speed, slide distance, all of your jumps. The first 20 hunters I looked up on some top PvP lists all had Stompies on. All of them, 20 in a row. It's not even close. In the current meta, movement is king, and hunters are the kings of movement. But, again, these are a movement exotic. If you don't like them, that is totally fine. Other highlights include the Dragon Shadow, WORMHUSK Crown, Gemini Jester, and the Sixth Coyote, a very familiar looking list. Personally, I'm putting WORMHUSK above all of these due to health regen, as I value health regen quite highly. Health regen effects are so good in this game and will continue to be unless something happens to them. Being able to exit a fight that you're losing safely or re-engage in a fight in order to win is incredible. Period. It's why I like Crest of Alpha Lupi on Titan, but with Wormhusk, the effect happens much faster and is on a shorter cooldown. With regards to Dragon's Shadow, I didn't like swap speed in PvE, but in PvP it is arguably one of the most important traits to have. It's why so many people want quick draw on their shotgun, or even their sniper, or their primary, whatever. Being able to fast swap allows you to shut down approaching players, or maybe even swap to a primary weapon, and finish off an opponent. The Dragon Shadow has a lot of uptime potential, but it is something you'll need to keep track of a bit more than your average exotic, and it does require maxed out mobility to see the best results. Gemini Jester is not bad. Being able to get rid of the enemy's radar for a short time can allow for some outplay potential for sure, especially as a hunter, as players will tend to go on the defensive whenever this is triggered on them. With high uptime, this can be pretty annoying to fight against, especially in more intimate settings. The 6th Coyote, again, multiple charges of dodge allow you to simply do more dodge-based stuff a little more often. However, when it comes to PvP, I'm throwing this down the list a bit more than the PvE rating. And that's because there are too many other good neutrals for hunters, and for hunters with maximum mobility, there's almost no way you'll need to dodge that often where having 2 will ever be a necessity. Finally, we have the rest of the exotics, and there is quite a rest of the exotics list. Starting with Helms, Knucklehead Radar is a lackluster PvE exotic, not really needing its utility outside of the most specific of circumstances, and while it's not the worst choice for PvP, you have so many better options. Foe Tracer's target marking ability felt like it has been forgotten about, one of the few things left in the game with said ability. It maybe deserves a little bit more than what I'm giving it in terms of placement in this list for PvP, but for PvE, the damage boost is insignificant and so is the target marking. Assassin's Cowl has some interesting utility for getting out of dangerous situations. In the context of GM Nightfalls, it's a decent way of ensuring a safe escape after a finisher, which might be necessary for any given reason, but mainly for special ammo finisher. There aren't too many times where I think you need the benefit of Assassin's Cowl to be successful in GMs though. Arms. We have Young AHAMKARA'S Spine, MECHANEER'S Tricksleeves, Sealed AHAMKARA Grasp, Oathkeeper, and Khepri's Sting. That's a lot, but I'll be brief. Young AHAMKARA'S Spine boosts your trip mines. Trip mines are not very good in PvE, decent in PvP, but not to the extent where I would want to spend my exotic slot on it. MECHANEER'S Tricksleeves are quite good at what they do, it's just what they do is typically not in demand. Sidearms are a bit better than they used to be, they're actually pretty usable, but fully investing into sidearms is a big commitment. I'm not saying it can't be done though, especially considering the surprise attack mod. Sealed AHAMKARA Grasps reload your weapon after a melee attack. While you can instantly reload some very slow reloading weapons in this way, I'm gonna guess that there are only a very specific amount of instances where this is gonna be worth running, especially considering the amount of reload bonuses you can get from other effects like Barricade or Lunafaction boots. Oathkeeper, you can indefinitely hold bow charges. Neat, I guess, but in the grand scheme of the game, it's pretty insignificant. Khepri's Sting has some niche utility in being able to gain some true sight, aka wall hacks, by dropping a smoke bomb on yourself. Usable in more intimate settings for sure, but I don't think the average player is going to be getting a ton of use from this mechanic. We've covered all the chest armor in some way, so we're going to move to boots. Lucky Pants had their time when fast swapping to Ariana's Vow was a thing in PvP. I guess it still technically is, but the gimmick isn't really used that much anymore. It was kind of a flavor of the month kind of build. Being able to quick swap to a hand cannon though, especially considering the state of hand cannons, not bad. But using your entire exotic for it? I don't know about that. Finally, Bombardiers, much like Titan's Severance Enclosure, never really took off at all. There are so many other dodge effects to use, and unless this explosion is wiping out GM Nightfall enemies, it's not going to be worth it. And even if it was, I don't even know if it would be worth it. That's it. Hunters, you guys have some of the best exotics that the game has to offer. Subclass specific ones for PvE, neutrals for PvP. but you also have some of the more lackluster exotics in the game. That's going to wrap up the exotic armor tier list for 2021. 2022's tier list is probably going to be done a little differently, as I don't think we really need a full, in-depth analysis of most exotics in the game anymore. Even yearly, things are not changing enough to the point where I really need to do such a deep dive. Regardless, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.